After leaving millions of Aussies languishing on fibre to the node, why has the NBN suddenly developed an appetite for fibre?
And what does it mean for Aussie broadband users, rival networks, and the future of 5G?
Vertical Hold is proudly brought to you by Aussie Broadband, changing the game with their award-winning network and Australian-based support. Hi there, welcome to Vertical Hold, Behind the Tech News, the weekly podcast where we sneak across the state borders to catch up with Australia's leading technology journalists and get the stories behind the big tech news of the week. I'm Adam Turner, and I'm joined as always by Alex Kidman, a man who, because it's such a slow news week, is about to listen to me spend the next half hour talking about Footscray making the AFL finals and Richie Port on the podium at Paris. Alex, who are your picks for the grand final and the Giro d'Italia?
Look, all I know is the lads are going to get out there. They're going to give it 110%. It's a game of two halves. And I think I can keep the sports cliches flowing as long as, and I stress, there's no huge breaking news like a sudden massive change in direction for the NBN or something. But how likely is that?
All right, so sports ball it is. And we're joined this week in the virtual Vertical Hold studio by Chris Duckett, editor of ZDNet Australia. Chris, what's your sports ball tips?
Oh, look, it's just nice to be on the back of the peloton after hanging out in the autobus for 200 kilometres. So it's good to be back, boys.
And because we had a hunch that there might be some NBN news on the cards, it's a huge show this week. We're also joined by Supratim Adhikari, the deputy business editor at the Sydney Morning Herald. Supratim, how goes it and what's your sporting tip?
Well, mate, I'm a cricket tragic, so, for me, I've just started watching the IPL a little bit, and I got to say, as long as we get the Boxing Day test happening this year, I will be very happy.
Oh, yeah, can't argue with that. Can't argue for that. And that's the show for the week. Oh, hang on. Did it. Late breaking news. Of course, our soup du jour has become the main course this week with the huge news that NBN has decided to let Australians upgrade from fibre to the node for free if they're prepared to pay for faster speeds. Now, Alex, what exactly have they announced?
Well, NBN has announced this week a $3.5 billion investment to get around 75% of the fixed NBN footprint able to get gigabit speeds eventually. But there's a lot of detail to this. They're going to do local loops of fibre, not quite to the premises, because if you want it to the premises, as you just said, you're actually going to have to upgrade to a faster plan. There's also some smaller concessions for people on HFC or fibre to the curb, and even smaller concessions for the smaller percentage of people on fixed wireless or satellite.
All right, so we'll dive into the details of that in a minute. But first, we're going to catch up with our podcast sponsor, Aussie Broadband, and chat to Managing Director Phil Britt about exactly what this means for broadband in Australia. Hi, Phil. Welcome back to the show.
Yeah, thank you.
It's been a huge week in NBN announcements. What are your thoughts?
Look, it certainly has been a big week, and I think for the most part, there's been some good stuff come out.
Why now? Is this the thing that we should have done in the first place? Was fibre to the node always the weak link in the NBN?
Look, I think fibre to the node has always been the weak link, but the way I sort of look at it is it has allowed us to get, I guess, everyone on board sooner. And I think this was always the intent, was to move to more fibre deeper into the network in stages. But I think this has been a relatively good compromise with getting people on quick and now moving to the next phase of upgrading people as demand exists.
And what kind of take-up do you expect to see?
Look, we're seeing around about 6% of our new customers taking the 250 and the gigabit speed plans. And so we think that will grow over time. And the concept with this rollout fibre, so if you're on a poor fibre to the node service, you can only get, say, 60 meg or something like that. If you want to buy 100, well, then they'll move you on to fibre. But if you're able to get 100 and fibre to the node will deliver that for you, then you'll stay there unless you want to go into the higher speed tier. So I can see people moving up tiers purely to get that fibre install.
And we haven't actually got a definitive line on what speed tier you need to order before they'll do this, have we?
Look, I don't think it's hard and fast, but some of the conversations we've had is it's more a case of if the service won't deliver the speed that you want to go to, then that's the trigger for the upgrade. So I think in that scenario I just played out there where you want 100 but you can only get 60, that would trigger the upgrade.
And do you have any insight from what you've seen from your customers on what percentage of people are out there who aren't happy with the speeds they can get from their connection and would perhaps want to take advantage of this?
Look, there's we see a lot of people that are on the 100 tier and it's probably in the realms of around about 20 to 30% of our FTTN base that are in the 100 meg tier that actually want 100 meg but are getting sub 100 meg, and so rather than drop down, they still pay for the 100 meg tier even though they might only be getting 60 or 70.
And what about people stuck in, like, do you got many people stuck on a sub 50 or even a sub 25? Because I know there are some connections they're still trying to sort out and improve.
Yeah, look, they're definitely sort of in the minority now. It's there's been a lot of work done by RSPs and NBN to sort out those sort of sub 50 kind of realm. There's still definitely some out there, but they're very much in the minority now.
And what kind of impact do you think this is going to have on the NBN and overall performance as more people take up faster connections?
Look, I think COVID's actually been a really good test of that because it's shown that the NBN can handle higher speeds, more traffic per user, and do it with relatively ease. So I think the issue around can the NBN handle it is, yes, it can in my view. It's really coming down to the pricing construct and can providers afford to provide those higher speed tiers, and that's really the CVC argument.
I was going to say that brings us back to CVC because they gave us a 40% boost for COVID. It's been extended twice now, I think. Now it's supposed to run out in November. Do you think that will be extended beyond that? And do you think that they might come to the point where they go, all right, let's just make it permanent?
Yeah, look, I don't think they're going to go, no, we're removing CVC in November. What we're hoping that they'll do, and this is purely a hope, there's no signs coming out of NBN that's going to happen, is that they might increase the inclusions as a stepping stone measure. But yeah, whether that actually plays out or not, hopefully we'll find out sometime between now and the end of November.
So there was obviously a spike during COVID, as more people staying at home, watching Netflix, working from home. Are you seeing that subside at all, or are we still in the middle of that?
Look, it's subsided a little bit, but certainly nowhere near the levels we'd expect. And what's really interesting is we're looking at it on a state by state basis, and states like WA and Queensland, which are relatively free from restrictions and things like that, still have much higher traffic profiles than they did pre-COVID. And so
Yeah.
I think it's been a good trigger for people to, instead of having one Netflix device now, they might have two or three, or the kids might be smashing the YouTube more. Traffic, I don't think, is going to return to the pattern we used to see.
Yeah, so it sort of changed people's behaviour and they'll stick with that afterwards.
That's what I believe, yeah.
So part of the talk is that perhaps the move now to offer more people access to faster speeds is a response to the potential threat from 5G to take away NBN customers as fixed wireless customers. Do you think that that's partly a factor there?
Look, I think it is partly a factor. I think you've got that at play. You've got wanting to increase the ARPU, or the average revenue per user. There's a number of factors that are at play here.
I know that it's still early days for 5G, but is it starting to look like that? Well, obviously you can't have 5G replace the NBN. We know that you can't have like a citywide wireless network do the same job as fibre. But in terms of cherry picking people who are in areas where they can't get good fixed line connections, do you think that 5G has the potential to cut into the NBN there?
I think it will, and I think where it's going to probably hit is more at the lower end of the spectrum, so lower data usage customers. I think the concept of an unlimited plan on 5G is probably a long way off if it happens at all. And so I think if you're in a sort of a sub 100 gig kind of realm, then 5G would be quite a viable alternative for you. If you're greater than that, then it's probably still going to be fixed line NBN.
So for NBN, obviously, it helps their bottom line to be to selling higher speed plans, and it helps the NBN look more attractive if you're trying to sell it off, if they're putting more fibre in the ground. But from an RSP's point of view, is it more difficult to sell these higher plans? Are you still making as much money of them? Like, how does it stack up for you as a business model?
Look, it's an interesting one. We've recently increased the price of our 100 meg offering back to sort of for the 120 back to the $99 price point. We were running that at the $89 price point. And that is based around customer usage on those plans is higher, and so therefore we have to provision more CVC. I think it doesn't actually really matter what the access speed is. It really comes down to what's the average usage, because someone on a 12.1 connection can do just as much CVC damage as someone on a 120 plan.
Yeah.
And so it really does come down to the inclusions and how that plays out.
And so looking forward, what do you think we're going to see? Because obviously this is like, some people want to spin it as, okay, they've completely thrown away the multi-technology mix and it's fibre for you and fibre for you and fibre for you, but that's clearly not what we're talking about here. It's only some sections of fibre to the node will be changed. Not everybody will have access to it. In a year or two, how much of a difference do you think this will actually have made?
Look, I think, it's 2 million premises is what they're saying it'll roll past. They're expecting only about 400,000 premises to have taken up, I guess, a planned speed upgrade to trigger that. So I still look at it and go, well, that's 400,000 people that could get fibre that otherwise couldn't. So that's a win. But I also look at it from the perspective of, if you've just got someone sitting at home, they're not using the speeds, then why pay the money to put fibre into them, sort of thing. If someone needs it, then NBN pay the money and put it in. It seems like a more logical solution to me.
Fair enough. Great. All right. Well, thanks for making the time to talk to us.
No worries. Thank you.
So, Chris, with the changes to the NBN, it's not quite that original plan of fibre for, I think it was like 98% of the population, is it? It's a little bit more constrained than that.
Yeah, there's still quite a thread running through the whole thing of trying to save as much money as possible. So all these new connections are going to be on demand for the residential customers. So that means that, if you sign up to a plan, and we don't know exactly what plan that is, but I assume it's probably going to be over 100 megabits, then NBN will come out and roll out a line into your place for free. But it's only doing that on request. This is the important bit, because that's how you can somehow get 4.5 billion, hook up a whole bunch of businesses, and only hook up 400,000 premises by 2024. So it's not quite fully back to the future, but in theory, in essence, the framework, it's almost exactly, it smells a lot like what Labor proposed way back and what they tore down.
Call me crazy. Isn't this the expensive way to do it, one at a time as people ask for? Or wouldn't it make more sense perhaps to just go down street by street and hook everybody up?
So, look, I wouldn't actually. I think there's room for argument here that, and I'm talking way back, like in 2010, that you could actually have made an argument to do this as it has been planned, in the sense of, we're going to get everybody to a base level. It's going to pay for itself, which it's set to do in the next couple of years. And then you return and you can then overbuild stuff, and that's fine because you've got the cash flows behind you. But no one ever said that, right? It was all running around and saying fiber's expensive, it can't be done, nobody wants it, all this sort of just a whole decade's worth of crap that we've all had to swim through to basically end up in the same spot. So yes, it does cost more, but you can make an economic argument that you got a baseline out to people quicker, and what you rolled out paid for itself, so therefore you're free to invest future cash flows into it, which is kind of what NBN sort of said. But like, the ministers are basically, they're trapped by their own stupidity and their own stupid words from elections past.
Supratim, I know you look at the business side of this, how is it not going to be more expensive for them? Because presumably if they're running this stuff as local loops, so the idea is they run it down your street if you're in a fibre to the node area. As we said, you have to ask to be connected. Doesn't that mean they've got to keep and maintain the fibre to the node stuff for the people who don't want faster or won't pay for faster and the fibre connections at the same time? Aren't they actually talking about now running an extra network?
Well, it's clearly, what has been announced this week. I mean, there's two elements to it. The first one, obviously, the one around, the business park issue, the issue of the getting into the business market again. That's a very different sort of an element to what NBN is trying to do. But the issue that was released yesterday around the fiber upgrade pathway. Look, this has very little to do with exactly how it, the efficiencies of the NBN. I think it was very much more a political play by the Morrison government. It's used, this is all going to come into the budget that's going to land on October the 6th, where the government is going to say it's spending money on infrastructure building. There's going to be 25,000 jobs created. It's going to provide a bigger return. So I think a lot of the commentary around this being a backflip or, going back to the Labour's model, I don't think it's got anything to do with that. This is not about force feeding fiber into 92% of premises across Australia. This is a very selective, targeted upgrade pathway that's going to take an enormous amount of time to get started. And it's really more of a defensive play against trying to at least create an environment of competitive tension in the market, especially in metro areas where there might be some contention where 5G fixed wireless services may be able to steal customers away from NBN. So I don't really see this as a huge, of course, economically it doesn't make sense. This idea that you're going to selectively roll out, fiber to, we don't know any details about this. We don't know which premises will be selected, which won't, although I suspect there'll be a very high overlap between areas that get these upgrades and areas where NBN feels they will lose out to a competitively priced fixed wireless option, right? So I think this has got there's a few elements here, but none of them really are about, delivering an upgraded full fiber pathway to our homes, because it's just so selective. Only very few people are going to be able to afford it at this rate, the way it's being priced. And it completely bypasses the core issue here, which is that RSPs, NBN resellers do not want to sell high-speed broadband to Australians because A, they have to package it at an enormous sum of money for a retailer at a retail cost to make their margins worthwhile. And B, they actually want to bypass the NBN altogether. And C, we have a patchwork MTM network which doesn't allow the provisioning or delivery of high-speed broadband to a large, substantial chunk of.
But doesn't this fix C, though, your point, that we've got this, hodgepodge MTM, doesn't this, and the stuff they're doing with HFC and to a lesser extent FTTC, fix that problem C?
Seems like such a small segment of the overall population that I just can't see how much value it delivers. They're clearly going to look to get a premium pricing model getting in here, so they're obviously going to target areas where they feel people can actually afford to pay $150, $160, $180 plus, So I think that's so I don't know how it actually delivers the upgrade benefit to the vast proportion of end users. It's just so targeted. And let's not forget also the civil engineering elements here. We know that the construction and rollout has been a huge problem, whether under Labour or under the coalition government's methodology. I just can't really see. I don't really understand. The sort of the inherent inefficiencies here, where you're going to go into a neighborhood and say, oh, maybe we're going to give only 50% of homes here want a $180 fiber upgrade, and others don't. So how does that actually work? But I suspect none of that matters because that's not what these announcements were about. These announcements are much more short-term in view, and I think much closer linked to the budget announcements that we're going to get in a week or so than any real significant shift in how NBN wants to work.
So you think they're going to spin it really as a COVID stimulus?
They already have.
I suspect it really is more about that spin and the optics around that than any real. But because what happens here is, you see, Scott Morrison and Paul Fletcher don't wear any of this risk, right? They're going to come out looking. They will spin it hard. It's going to make them look really good. But who's going to wear the damage? It's going to be Stephen Rue, and it's going to be the NBN board that wears all of the risk here, right? If this doesn't work, they're the ones who are going to get it, right? Not so much the Morrison government or whichever government's there at the time, right? If within the next 2 years, if this whole thing turns out to be, the whole strategy goes pear-shaped, well, there's very little accountability, attached to the government. They say, we did what we did. It's NBN's fault. The board's fault if they can't execute properly.
So you really think because I just made the assumption that maybe they meant 50 megabits per second, because that's what they've talked about for a while. They're trying to get people up to that level of asking for 50 megabits per second. And some people are running around like this is a complete backflip. We're getting rid of the MTM. It's fiber for everybody. It's clearly not fiber for everybody, because as you say, they're not getting rid of cable. They're not getting rid of fiber to the curb.
Adam, we're actually already there. I mean, I looked at NBN Co's own numbers on this yesterday, and they reckon something like 69% of homes and businesses are on 50 meg plus.
Yeah,
it's been
a 50 meg network now for better part of a year.
So if you declared at 50, you're basically going to get everybody on board. So they've set the bar higher.
Well, the bar's still low at 50. It's just that they've got the potential to get to a gig. So the people that are running around saying, this is going to fix the digital divide, it's actually going to make it worse than ever, because you're going to have potentially 70% of the network theoretically able to get a gig on demand somehow, because they're not including fiber to the basement in this. And you're still going to have fixed wireless and the satellite stuck around somewhere between 25 and 50, depending on which way the wind blows. And unfortunately, those people in those last two footprints, they're the ones that need the telehealth and all the benefits that NBN is said to provide. And so there's no upgrade path for them. Like, to upgrade the satellite, they either need to launch a new one or buy some bandwidth when Elon covers the entire sky in satellites.
So, Chris, can you just clarify, because I may have got this wrong earlier in the week when I was reading their pieces. It looked, from what they were saying, and let's face it, a lot of this detail is vague, but it looked as though they were not saying we are replacing the entire fiber to the node network. Am I wrong in that? Are they actually getting rid of all that copper as it stands?
No, it's
so there's still going to be a percentage of fiber to the node that doesn't get this fiber upgrade at all.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's what I thought was the case. So there's a divide there too.
Yeah, what they announced. Yeah, exactly. This announcement was only for 2 million fiber to the node premises, and it's only theoretical, and they only expect 400,000 to take it up. But in the stuff that Stephen Rue was saying, it sounds like in subsequent corporate plans they might take that 2 million. Maybe they'll have the whole footprint covered by 2026 or 2028 or something.
I think by 2026, 28, NBN will no longer be will potentially not be a government-backed entity at all, enterprise at all. It'll be a privatized entity by then. And I think that's the whole issue here. They are going to start this upgrade pathway as they always said they will, but they'll do it in a very, very piecemeal manner. Because, the one thing that you do get out of this is that you make NBN dress it up as a much more viable entity for buyers, right? For potential buyers, for people who are willing to invest in long-term digital infrastructure assets that are going to deliver a return over the long term. So I think this idea of NBN using taxpayer money to underwrite the debt they will raise from private markets to upgrade the entire fiber to the node HFC or fiber to the curb footprint, I don't think that's going to realistically happen, I feel. But what it does is, I think the clear thing it shows that is there is an incredible level of contention now in a number of high-value metro, outer metro areas, where, as you said, as Chris said, the network is relatively optimized for 50 Mbps. There's a high uptake of 50 Mbps plans in the market, but how do you cope, or how does that add up or stack up when you have within the next, say, year and a half or within the next 2 years, you're going to have telcos who don't want to pay high wholesale prices coming to homes and saying, we can give you 100 megabits for $65 or $70 because we're going to use a optimized fixed wireless option for you. So there's this contestability now that's entering the market within the next year and a half. And I think when NBN goes out there and says, we have the option to give fiber to the premises if you want it at a certain price point, it is trying to address that contestability. It's trying to give the end user in selected areas an option, an alternative to saying, do you sign up to a fixed wireless service, or do you say, no, I'll stick with NBN, and if I need more speed, well, look, you know what, I'm happy to pay for it. But let's not forget that this whole service has to be priced and delivered by the very RSPs and telcos that do not want to pay CVC. Right? They don't want to pay CVC. They don't want to pay this combined CVC, AVC price of $80, $85 because they just don't make any money out of it.
Yeah, and these upgrades also, they increase NBN's internal rate of return. So the telcos are definitely going to run around and say, well, you're making more money now. You've got less of an excuse to keep the prices where they are.
That's right. And I think we'll get ready to hear some serious chatter on that CVC from everyone, That problem is not going away. And I mean, it's weird. Like Australia is just one of these weird geographies now where we're actually even having a conversation of having a fixed wireless alternative to a fixed line product. It just doesn't exist in many other geographies, It's
because
just
no one else has the CVC.
because and also because no one else has such a hodgepodge fixed line network that delivers so that is so unreliable or delivers such a wide range of performance metrics,
Yeah, or an off budget government owned wholesaler
exactly.
that has to make a commercial return.
Exactly. I mean, if we had a fixed line network that was reliable and was delivering, and I guess that's what the dream always was from Labor, right? That if we could do that, then we create an environment of, where there's a reliable fixed line connection, and then people can, use other options depending on their needs. But we've got such a patchy fixed line network now that the fact that we can think about millimeter wave powered fixed wireless services, I mean, it's an amazing, indictment on how the whole process has played out, in Australia.
But Supratim, how quickly are we realistically going to see that wide-scale 5G fixed wireless anyway? I mean, so far, Optus is the only real player in consumer land doing it. Telstra is yet to kind of tip its hand. If they're all waiting on millimeter wave, that doesn't even get auctioned until I think it's early next year. So they'd have to actually start the build out. Isn't that a couple of years away as well?
I think it's going to run very parallel, I think, with this process, because I believe NBN said yesterday that they're not even going to get the forward planning, the planning stages of this fiber upgrade ready until late next year. And I think we all have an understanding of how this works, right? Given the track record of NBN of how long this actually goes from, I guess, from a blueprint right now to actually, in practice. One of the things with 5G is that deployment can be done at a quicker pace. And I don't think any of the RSPs are really going to leverage millimeter wave fixed wireless to create a mass market alternative to the NBN. What they're going to do, though, however, is they're going to pick the pockets of dissatisfaction. And while NBN is looking to create a premium product right now with this fiber upgrade, what I feel the likes of Telstra and Optus and TPG, and I think it well could be Optus and TPG really driving this in the market and Telstra coming in a bit later, but it really will be they're going to go to areas where they can deliver a comparable service or maybe even a better service to the NBN in FTTN areas where people are not willing to pay $150 to get fiber to the premises, and they're sick of having line dropouts on their HFC or their FTTN, substandard FTTN connections, I think that's where the opportunity will be. So I don't think there's ever going to be a sort of a mass market, wholesale competition against the NBN. But at the end of the day, even on selling a $75 100 megabits plan for Optus in select suburbs means it still gets to keep more money than having to resell NBN FDTN 50 megabits product, where they're still wearing a big, they're making very little money out of that. So it's all going to come down to that, I think, on how many sort of 5G fixed wireless services does a telco need to sell to be able to make some margin out of it.
So, Chris, how dirty would you be if you're one of those poor bastards who spent thousands of dollars on the technology choice program to get a bit of fibre run to your house?
Especially given that NBN's announced that they're going to do instant quotes on the site with no fee. And those poor buggers not only having to pay tens of thousands for a line, had to pay like $800 just to get a quote from somebody who did a desktop analysis, which means they just pull up the map and go, oh, yeah?
Yeah.
Probably about that much. Yeah.
Should be right. Yeah.
How dirty would they be?
To the end.
I would be looking to get a refund or something out of them, because unless you were that one guy who ran FTTP in a fixed wireless area, I'm sorry, that one's on you. But otherwise, yeah, you'd be pretty dirty.
And there'd be a lot of people as well when they changed the footprint. Originally, as it became harder to run out fibre to the node and fibre to the premises, they started to take more and more people and just shunt them across to fixed wireless and satellite because it was easier than fixing the problem in that area. So there would be people who are stuck on those now who originally would have been in a fixed line area, yes?
Yeah. I mean, look, NBN does a lot of shifting of stuff because, you plan stuff on a map and then you get out there and you work out that the ground's full of basalt and stuff, and you just can't do it. So I've done yarns on people in South Australia getting shunted on the fixed wireless, but then by the same token, a community got shunted onto satellite because they didn't want fixed wireless towers. So you can complain it's awful, but they couldn't find a single farmer to put a tower up. And at the same time,
here is your foot. You have shot yourself.
Yeah. And don't try and deploy 5G in that area is probably the next piece of advice. But they're playing with this stuff all the time. I think the interesting thing is when they do these regional fibre runs, because NBN's always said that when a fibre runs past, a suburb or something, that they can cheaply connect people up there with better service. And if they're running fibre into some of the regional towns that were previously put on fibre to the node, I would love to know if they're actually going to run proper spurs off them or not.
Explain the difference for those of us keeping up at home.
So what it would mean is maybe somebody up in northern New South Wales might suddenly find that the house is capable of getting a full fibre connection instead of being stuck on fixed wireless or fibre to the node like they were under the old plan. And that's just because there's a fibre line going into the main street of town.
Gotcha. Actually, so here's my other question with this whole rollout, Chris.
Oh,
sorry.
This one's actually close to your heart, Alex. Yeah. On the list of towns that were now fibre business zones, one of the ones they announced was Armidale. Armidale was the first town to get full fibre because Tony Windsor.
Isn't that just hurrah? Job done day one, because they were literally was what Armidale and I think Kiama were the first mainland non-Tasmania bits of the NBN. So that feels like they're just filling out lines there. But I was going to say, Chris, because I know you were in on NBN's media calls and so on, what strikes me with this whole requested loop thing versus technology choice is I can't see what's stopping someone, given so many of the NBN plans are month to month now, saying, well, they've said technology choice will cost me, X $1,000 or whatever, or even X $100 if you're very lucky, or they're going to run it past my place, but I've got to sign up for a faster plan. So a plus 100 meg plan, basically, I think is the assumption we're working on. What's to stop me saying, right, I'll have that for 1 month so that I can get the fibre lead in for the bit of reliability that you get out of fibre. After the month, I just go to the ISP, right, I'd like the 50 back, thanks.
Probably the asterisk in the contract.
Yeah.
I would imagine that they're going to say, if we do this, you have to stay on a 100 megabit plan wherever you are for like 1 or 2, 3 years. It's just those are the same clauses, by the way, they're putting in on the business side of the equation as well. So they announced on Monday or Tuesday, whenever they did it, that if a business gets a fibre lead in, NBN won't charge them, but if they stay less than 12 months, NBN will then charge the retailer.
I mean, this is the interesting, sort of space we find ourselves in, right? We have a fixed wholesale network which relies on RSPs selling high speeds, but it provides them almost no incentive to sell high speeds to people. There's absolutely no, so I don't think, if someone does put their hand up to get this fiber upgrade, they're going to have to cop that price for a substantial period of time because there's just no way RSPs are going to let them skate,
Yeah, I think that's how you suppress the number down to 400,000 over 2 years, because there is only a certain segment of the market that's going to cop that.
Yeah, plus it's incredibly expensive broadband. It's an incredible price point to ask a household to pay that much for a fixed line, irrespective of how much they want to use and what their user metrics might be and what their data demands might be. There's just no way around it. It's very, very expensive home broadband, and it, I think, highlights another couple of issues with the NBN. I know we've always focused a lot on access technology and whether it should be fiber or a mix of technology. But there are some bigger sort of inherent structural issues here that are coming to the fore now. This idea that NBN spends money to go into an urban area to deliver fiber on demand. It's ludicrous, right? Compare that to, wouldn't it be better if we had private companies who would roll this out inside, your Digitech or someone like that? That's how the market should work in the metro areas, right?
We did wait for 30 years, and that never happened.
I was going to say there was a bit of evidence that they weren't keen to do that, except where they could cherry pick and.
No, but I think the reason why it doesn't happen, and NBN was meant to fix that, right? But it didn't. What it did instead was create another monopoly, which is now aided and abetted by, including the competition regulator, where if you are a private investor who wants to say, hey, you know what, don't sign up to $150 plan from an RSP because it's all about NBN's economics. What if a small company could roll it out to you? The point is you don't want to do that because the minute you hit scale, you're going to get smashed by the ACCC. So, we've created an investment environment as well where there's just absolutely there's nothing in it for a private investor to come in and try to fix issues, right? Because, Chris, the fixed wireless and the satellite consumers that you mentioned, there is zero hope for them for ever getting any kind of upgrade, right?
Yeah.
Because it already costs NBN $4 billion to service those loss-making areas. But, I would much rather see NBN raise money from the private capital markets that's, debt underwritten by taxpayers for them to go into these areas and give them the best possible service, instead of saying, we'll selectively choose areas in and around the metro areas where we think it works best for us and get people to sign up to expensive broadband.
Yeah, I do think that NBN's timing has been accidentally impeccable in the sense of these upgrades were going to start in about 3 years' time, and probably not to the quantum that we've seen announced this week. At the same time, there's obviously been an uplift in data because of the pandemic. And at the same time, the capital markets, you can borrow money so cheap, it's unbelievable. Like if you've got the means, go out there and borrow all the money you can because it is so cheap. And for all those reasons combined, it's like, my goodness, there is no better time to do this. And, Stephen Rue can sit there looking at his balance sheet going, I'm very smart. But you cannot convince me that he meant any of that.
Yeah, there's definitely a confluence of events here that does make it easier to go into the markets now. But it is debt and it'll have to be paid back. That's the thing.
Yeah, but what they could get from the capital market is probably cheaper than the dividends they're meant to pay to the government in like 5 years.
Yeah, that's right.
So what does this mean, though? Because the NBN was completed with an asterisk mid-year, but you had those 100,000 odd places that were stuck in the too hard basket. What does it mean for those folks?
80% of them are done by the end of the year, supposedly. So that'll probably leave about 20,000 really difficult ones. And they basically will get what they're given.
And they'll like it.
Yeah, they can't expect. Yeah, don't expect miracles.
No. There's going to be enough people to appear on a current affairs show at 7:00 near you for sufficient period of time yet.
Yeah. Well, until it gets privatized, pretty much. I reckon you can fill a slot every day of someone who's dissatisfied with their service or hasn't, not received what they paid for or didn't get what they expected. I think that's definitely
Well,
true.
let's just spitball here. Let's say it was privatized next year. Now, that's obviously not going to happen. It's further away than that. But once it's privatized, all of this can go out the window, can't it? So there's nothing obligating them once it becomes a private company to actually stick with this promise of we will hook you up with fibre if you pay for a better plan.
Well, I mean, privatization will firstly depend, hiving off the loss-making parts of NBN, right?
So big chunks of it.
Yeah, so big chunks of that will have to be hived out or have to be sold separately or rolled into some other sort of an instrument, right, that'll go out to the market. Then the core attractive business will be the wholesale monopoly that is NBN in the metro areas. The assumption is that, if whoever ends up buying it it's in their best interest to keep upgrading the network, right? And fixing up the FTTN and the FTTC and also the HFC, I guess, to a full fiber environment as quickly as they can. I mean, that would be the ideal goal here, right? But there's going to be that very distinct divide between what stays as the NBN that services the metro areas of Australia and fixed wireless and satellite. I mean, you're going to have to dress them up and make them attractive in a way where you can, where there's some value there, or that may, I don't know how you can service those areas without some sort of government money flowing in there, some sort of funding or something.
Well, that is what the RBS is meant to pay for, the rural broadband charge, whatever it is.
Yeah, that charge. Again, you're going to wonder, that charge, how much money does that actually raise? And is that sufficient money to service the needs of regional area? Or is it, again, another disincentive to telecoms companies to not compete against the NBN? NBN has been given a lot of protections as an entity, which I think sometimes, in some ways, have become counterproductive.
It has, but back to Adam's question, I was sort of thinking to myself, I wouldn't want to be holding my breath waiting for a free leading from Bain Capital broadband network.
Yeah, we don't know who it'll be, that's the thing. But whether it's...
No, but
Telstra.
We could get Sol back.
We're going to rake over those coals again?
What's Sol doing these days?
That's a good question, actually. What is he doing? He's probably
counting his money.
Yeah, I was about to say, he's probably well retired on a private island or something.
Oh, he's probably a tech bro somewhere, investing money in all kinds of blockchain, maybe. Or crypto, maybe.
Yeah, he's probably running a blog. Let's talk blockchain.
But yeah, look, the privatization thing is going to play up. I reckon it's going to be a while before that becomes a reality. For the moment, it's all about NBN, and I think the most pressing issue is really that the pricing issue. With regards to it's really creating such a disincentive for the RSPs that NBN really relies on them, right, to sell those prices. So I don't know at what point do we get, some sort of an understanding from NBN to look at or revisit that wholesale pricing. The telcos are obviously going to keep agitating for it. But again, it's one of those issues which is at the heart of, I guess, some of the end user problems that we end up seeing as well from time to time as well,
Well, that just about wraps up a bumper episode of Vertical Hold. Thanks to both Chris and Supratim for joining us for this week's show.
Pleasure as always.
Thanks, guys. Great to be here.
So, Chris, if people want to find yourself on social media and online, where do they do that?
Come and see the writing at ZDNet.com. And do not track me down on social. It is a den of just awful memes.
You're probably not wrong there. Supratim, same kind of question. Where do people find your work online and you on social media?
We'd love for the audience to obviously read the SMH and the Age online, but also obviously when you can pick up the paper as well. And as for social, look, my social media is really more consigned to my cooking escapades in the kitchen more than anything else.
He's the ISO cooking king. He really is.
And of course, you can catch up with us on Twitter at verticalholdau, online at verticalhold.com.au, or via the Vertical Hold Facebook page.
Once again, thanks for joining us for a huge week in NBN news. Don't forget to tell your friends, leave us a review on your podcasting platform of choice to spread the good word, and Kana Bulldogs! Vertical Hold is proudly brought to you by Aussie Broadband, changing the game with their award-winning network and Australian-based support. That's going to end up on the cutting room floor, I can assure you. Yeah.
Oh, include it, you cowards.